Chess YouTube, welcome back. And oh boy, Christmas came early this year. Magnus Carlsen, the GOAT, and Hans Niemann, the bad boy of chess, two guys who are not exactly best friends. They just faced off in this week's Title Tuesday tournament, and the summary of this game is total and complete capitulation. Magnus showed just how big of a gap there is between him and Hans, and it is bigger than you could possibly imagine. In this game, Magnus enters a deep dark forest, and Hans simply cannot keep up. He gets lost in the complications, and in the end, Magnus wins in just breathtaking, spectacular style. All right, in the game, Magnus here playing as white, opens one, knight f3, the ready opening, black goes d5, and now 2g3. Magnus here going for a King's Indian attack setup. Him and Hikaru just love this setup for white these days. The point being, you go knight f3, g3, bishop g2, castles, but once you do that, once all those moves are over, there are so many ways for you to continue. You can go d4, c4, you can go d3, c4, d3, e4, b3, bishop b2. There are just so many ways to play this opening as white. All right, from here, black, knight f6, bishop g2, and e6. Black going for sort of a queen's gambit decline setup, a very solid idea. Black's going to go bishop b7, castles, c5, knight c6, and so on, and he will get a very solid setup in this game. From here, we have castles, bishop b7, and now the big question, how does Magnus here want to continue in this game? He's got many ideas. You can go, for example, d4, c4. You can go d3, c4, or d3, e4. You can go b3, bishop b2, c4, d3. There's so many ideas. In the game, though, Magnus goes for the double fianchetto setup, b3, intending bishop b2, getting both these b's on these long diagonals. A very slow, patient, but flexible setup that is designed, again, to take Hans into a deep, dark forest where he simply will get lost in the ensuing complications. All right, black here, castles, we have bishop b2 and c5. So far, very, very standard stuff from Hans. He's going for the most standard of standard responses to the King's Indian attack. From here, Hans' plan is knight c6 and then slowly bringing out more of his pieces. All right, Magnus, how are you going to proceed from here? He plays a move that Hikaru himself has been playing a ton as white, including in the Speed Chess Championships. He plays this move e3. Now, this already is super, super rare. The point being, when you go e3, typically the idea is to go d4 and c4, but when you do this, usually you want the bishop on e2 or d3, not on the g2 square. So e3 is already a super, super rare idea from white. More typical is going to be d3 or c4 and so on, but e3, very, very rare. All right, black, knight c6. Standard idea. And another very rare move from white, queen to e2. What is the idea behind this? Well, it's sort of a multi-purpose idea. First of all, black, in general, he wants to go b5. That is the idea. Black, if he had a bunch of free moves, he would go, for example, b5, a5, gain some space, and so on. Queen e2 clamps down on the b5 square immediately. And although black can go b5, it's kind of a crazy idea, but it is playable. Trust me, it is playable. Queen e2, first of all, clamps down on b5. Second of all, the idea is rook d1 and then maybe d4 next with the rook on the d file, opposing the black queen on d8. But again, Magnus going for just a really bizarre, unusual opening so far in this game. Now, as promised, b5 here is actually playable. The idea is b5, and if white takes b5, knight to b4, intending bishop to a6 with the skewer on the queen and the rook. Now, beyond that, black can go, for example, rook to b8 or a6, intending b5. It's all very standard, but the move Hans plays in the game instead is simply here, bishop b6, intending bishop b7. Now, there's nothing wrong with this move. It's a fine move. It's a very fine move. But already, Hans going for a slightly passive setup that I don't know if that's the best idea versus the GOAT. Magnus is just so good in these slow maneuvering games. I personally don't like this move for black in this game. All right, from here, Magnus. Again, he's got lots of options. You can go rook d1 or c4 and so on. But instead, knight to e5, jumping in and attacking the newly weakened knight on c6. Of course, now the pawn on b7 is not on b7, it's on b6. The knight on c6 is undefended, and therefore white here threatening to capture the free knight. From here, black takes on e5, white takes back, and then bishop d6 offering the trade of bishops. Magnus, he declines, bishop b2, sliding back to the b2 square. So far, so good. And now here, black plays the move e5. Now, this, again, it looks very logical. It looks very good. But again, is not the most precise idea. The problem is these pawns on c5, d5, and e5 are now a little bit vulnerable. Magnus here has these targets. He can go c4 or d4 or e4, even f4, targeting these pawns, and it's going to give Magnus lots and lots of options in this game. Now from here, he plays the strongest idea, that is c4, attacking on the queen side. And again, there's so much tension now in the center. The pawn on d5, of course, being attacked. Black plays the move here, bishop g4, attacking the queen. Now, very importantly, if white drives back this piece, the pawn on d5 will still be vulnerable. Therefore, black has to be careful about that. In the game, Magnus here plays f3, pushing back the bishop. We have bishop h5, a massive, and I mean massive, potentially game-ending blunder right here. Now, there's one tactical idea for Magnus. If he finds this idea, he kind of wins the game on the spot. It is a really mind-blowing idea. In the game, Magnus, he does not find it. The idea is you take on d5. So c takes d5, and if black takes back, here's the problem. From there, g4, bishop g6 is forced, and then f4 with the double attack. You're threatening the knight on d5. You're also threatening f6 with the Noah's Ark trap on the bishop. And white wins a piece and wins the game in shocking fashion. So c takes d5 right here is the key idea. Magnus, he doesn't find this. Instead, d3 played in the game. Both sides not finding their basic tactical ideas, and the game does go on. Hans, d4, Magnus, e4, and now we have this very closed center. Sort of a King's Indian defense style setup, with white playing as black and black playing as white, essentially. So, from here, the center is closed, and everything is going to happen on these flanks. White's going to go, for example, b4 or f4. Black's going to go b5 or f5, and both sides will play on the flanks of the board. Black, queen c7. White, knight d2. We have h6, now h4, gaining space, a sort of risky idea. The idea being, of course, you can go g4, h5, bishop h3 ideas, and so on, but a little bit risky. All right, black here, bishop g6, getting out of the way of the impending attack of g4. White, bishop h3, simply finding a much better square for the bishop, and black, rook a to e8 is the move. Now, queen g2, knight h5, and rook a to e1. So Magnus here, he's showing his intentions. He wants to play on the king side. He wants at some point to go f4, maybe f5, maybe g4, g5, and so on. That is the idea. If he can get these pawns on f5 and g5, it would be absolutely lights out. Therefore, Hans, he's got to find some way to slow down all of these ideas from Magnus. All right, king to h8 is the move. Bishop c1, finding, again, a better square for the piece. The bishop on b2 doing absolutely nothing on c1. At least it does control this diagonal via the x-ray attack. Black here, a6, threatening b5 potentially. Magnus, a4, clamping down on b5 as well. And now bishop to h7, sliding back out of the way of the impending f5 attack. Now, Magnus, bishop g4, knight f6, bishop h3, knight h5. So Hans showing he wants a draw. If Magnus wants it, he can go. Bishop g4, knight h5, bishop h3, knight h5, and so on. That would be a draw on the spot. Magnus here, of course, being the GOAT, being just the superior player in this game, he's playing for a win. Instead, rook e2 is the move. Black, rook g8, rook f to f2, queen b7, bishop g4, knight f6, bishop f5, knight h5. So both sides kind of sharking around. Does Magnus want the trade here of bishops? Let's see. All right. He trades on h7, bishop takes h7 is the move. We have king takes, and then queen to h3. Now queen c8, the queen slides back. And now here in this position, Magnus, he plays a blunder. The worst move of the game by far. He plays the move here, queen to f5 check. Okay, what's the problem with this move? It's simple. Hans Niemann, he can literally win a pawn. It's not complicated. Queen takes, e takes, and then knight takes g3 is the idea. Winning a pawn, also the double attack on the rook and f5. Winning two pawns. Hans, is he good enough to find the most elementary of elementary tactics? Turns out, no, he's not. He has too much respect for the GOAT in a weird way. He doesn't take on f5. What on earth, Hans? You have 3 minutes here. You don't take the queen. What are you doing? It is such a bizarre turn of events. All right, black here. He plays g6. He doesn't take the queen. Magnus, he trades on c8. Black takes back, and now king g2. And now we have a very complicated endgame, and Magnus being the best endgame player of all time. Even though he's a little bit worse here, we're going to see him just completely outplay Hans slowly but surely. It is the most bizarre endgame you will see in a very long time. Hans here, f5, gains some space, a solid move, and now knight to f1. Black, rook c to f8, sliding over, king to h3, rook to f7, g4, and now knight g7. Now here, Magnus, he trades on f5. We have e takes, g takes, and then here in this position, knight g3, pressuring f5, rook g to f8, king g2, bishop c7, bishop d2, a5, and rook to f1. So both sides sort of sharking around, neither side trying to trade. Obviously, if black trades on g4, white takes back. And from there, he has simply a fantastic pawn structure. The 2 versus 1 majority on the king side, the weak pawn on d5, the outpost on e4, and so on. So black here obviously cannot take on g4. That'd be a losing mistake. So what does he do here? Hans, in this position, he plays the big mistake, e4. Now, this looks super aggressive, but it turns out this is just not the way to go. He's just not ready for this. Magnus trades on e4. We have d takes, black trades on g3, bishop takes, king takes, and now f takes g4, and king takes. All right, the complications are over for now. Black has the pass pawn on d4, but white in return has the 2 versus 0 majority on the e and f files. These pawns here are so strong. Hans Niemann, why on earth did he go for this position? I mean, back here, he's doing just fine. Material is even, but here, in this position, with the 2 versus 0 majority on this in the center here, I mean, Hans, what are you doing? Rook g8 is the move, setting up all kinds of discovered attacks on the king. Magnus, he sees this, king to h3, slides out of the way of the attack, and we have knight to h5. Now, rook g2 slides over, rook g to f8 as well sliding over, and rook g to f2, defending f2 with those 2 rooks. All right, rook g8, king to h2, rook e8, and rook e1. Now we have knight f6, king g2, rook g7, king f1, knight h5, rook g2, offering the trade, rook f7 declines, and now king to e2. So the king here sliding over from g2, or h3 rather, all the way to e2, intending king d3 with the perfect blockade of that d-pawn. Black, rook e to f8, rook f1, rook e8, rook g to g1, rook e f8, rook f2, rook f6, rook g4. Both sides sharking around. Magnus here, he's in absolutely no rush in this position. Rook e6, king d3, the ideal placement of the king. The king is just so perfectly placed right there. All right, black, rook f to e8, rook g1, and now black here makes a fatal mistake. Again, not fatal, but a big mistake. Rook to f6. Now, this move may not look that bad, but Magnus here, being the greatest endgame player ever, he finds the absolute perfect way to punish this. His plan is so simple. f4, then f5, then rook to g6, threatening h6, and if black takes, white takes back with a fantastic game. Let's see how it goes. f4, rook f7, f5, knight f6, rook e2, knight d7, bishop f4. So far, so good. Rook f to e7, and now rook to g6, threatening h6. And what can black do in response? He can do absolutely nothing. We have rook g7. Now here in this position, Magnus, he has the option of trading on h6. He can win the free pawn, but instead of that, he just maintains total and complete control of the game, and he plays the move here, h5. The point being, if you take on g6, white takes back with the h-pawn and has the triple pass pawn army marching down the board, and that is what happens. Black takes on g6, white takes back, the king moves, and now look at this. Look at, I mean, the endgame was even just a few moves ago, even like around move 46 here. The endgame is still about even, but then a few moves later, after like this position right here, white is just dominating at such a level. It is so amazing how this always happens. Magnus always seems to find a way to just completely bamboozle his opponents and win in this fashion. Black, knight e5, hits the king. Magnus here, he trades on e5, black takes back, and then rook to h4, defends e4. Rook e8, king e2, king f6, king f3, d3, rook h2 defending, and this pawn on that d3 square, it is as good as gone. Black, rook d8, king e3, white guards d2. There's nothing black can do to save this pawn. rook d4, rook d2, king e5, and now here g7. Black, as soon as he threatens this pawn on e4, white goes g7, distracting the black king. You must respond. You cannot let white get the new queen on g8. So g7 is the move, rook d8, and now rook takes d3, winning another pawn in this endgame. Black, rook g8, rook d7 defends the pawn. I mean, adding insult to injury here. Black, king to f6, rook d6 hits the king, king f7, rook g6 defends the pawn again. And here's the problem: if you take the pawn, these two pawns win the game on the spot de facto. Black, h5, e5, rook takes, e6 hits the king, king f8, rook takes, king takes, and now king to f4. And this endgame is completely winning for white. It's the easiest win in the world for Magnus. Here, king f6, king g3, h4, and white takes the pawn. And here's the problem: if you take this pawn, the only pawn you can take, de7 wins the game on the spot, as black cannot chase down that pawn. That is the problem. Here we have king e7, and from here white simply cleans up in this game. Now don't get me wrong, both sides in extreme time pressure, white having 5 seconds left, black 3, and there is no increment. Therefore Hans here, he continues playing on. His only chance is winning via the timer, essentially. So let's see what happens. Magnus, he jumps in, pushes those pawns, pushes, and in the end, 2 queens, lots of lag. Sorry about the lag, but in the end, white wins via the checkmate. What a game here between Magnus and Hans in this Title Tuesday Blitz game that happened this week. I mean, Magnus going for the weirdest opening with e3 and queen e2 and, you know, knight e5 and just really weird, bizarre stuff. And in the end, it worked out to absolute perfection. Magnus winning the game in the end game, where Hans was simply outplayed so badly. It was literally total and complete capitulation by Hans in this game. What a game. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please smash that like button, comment down below. Whatever you want to say is all good. By the way, we are doing a Black Friday launch of our new program, DR Mike Chess Pro, starting on Friday. So stay tuned for the big launch. In the meantime, if you want to, you can still join the free community, drmikechess.com. But keep in mind, once we do the launch, that will be the main focus going forward. So join if you want, and I'll see you in the next video.